some of the things that Kevin Durant, Bam Adebayo, also had some things to say about Joel Embiid, just to share with some of the people who have yet to read your story, but some of the things that you heard from them. What did you make of their thoughts on Joel Embiid in this environment?
Yeah, so I mean, look, you're going to hear this largely the same things from all these guys about what it takes to be a part of a group like this, right? And Bam, I think, summed it up pretty nicely, where he's like, every single guy in here, and I don't think this is actually true, by the way. He said every single guy in here is either the number one or the number two option on their team. Now, you'd certainly go to the Boston guys, say Drew Holiday, and now Derek White, who we'll talk about at some point, are not those guys in Boston. But largely, that's true of everybody else. They are franchise driving players, the type of people that get paid max money, score a whole lot of points. Most of them are high level two-way guys. And you don't just get to go out there and, I'm going to go get 30. I'm going to do this. We're going to run everything through me. And, most of these guys have been through this experience before in one way or another. Bam was in, for example, he played in the last Olympics, was the starting center after I believe he actually got cut from the 2019 FIBA World Cup team. And so he's learned from firsthand experience. Like, you have to set some things aside. Like, I'm going to play the way the group needs me to, rather than the way that potentially works for me. And Adebayo's case, he was saying, I'm going to play the four. Like, he's going to play in some of these double big looks, or maybe Devon's coveted triple big lineup that he's dying to see while we're out here in Las Vegas or during the Olympics. But Steve Kerr, while Derek was here on Monday, alluded to the fact that, Joel is probably going to set up on the block more and get closer to the rim and post up. And I joked this morning in that story, he might get an honorary key to the city of Philadelphia from all the South Philly dads who are sick of watching Joel shoot jumpers. But, we're going to see certainly what Joel has always done, or has done over the last 3-4 years. It's part of why Team USA recruited him and wanted him to come play for USA basketball. But there'll be times when he's just a screen setter for Steph Curry, or he's spacing the floor so that LeBron can do the slash and kick stuff. And certainly Joel's played with a ton of talented guys at this point in his career. Guys like Jimmy Butler, James Harden, Tyrese Maxey. He's going to be playing with Paul George quite soon. But I think it's just a good way for him to kind of step outside of where he's normally at as the undisputed alpha of the team, the guy through whom all things run. And he's going to have some of that in Vegas and in Paris, and was it Abu Dhabi's the other place that they're going for their pre-Olympic tune-up. And so he'll get some of that, but it'll be good for him, I think, to learn how to kind of elegantly toggle between roles. And what I would be excited for is, with all these high-level offensive players, if he sees, okay, I can leverage my energy, my effort on defense and rebounding more, that maybe he comes out of this experience and says, look, if PG and Tyrese and I can get these role players going early in games and they can carry us on that end, then maybe I can get back to where he thought he'd be at the beginning of his career and say, I want to be defensive player of the year. I want to be up at that level. And so I'm really excited to see what he looks like with this group. I'd be really excited if it was just him, Steph Curry, and basically nobody else, like what that terrible FIBA World Cup team that finished fourth place. I would be excited to see just those guys. So I'm really compelled by him amongst all these stars, and I can't wait for this game later and the Olympics later this summer.
They got 5 total games before the real thing, which seems comically small. And it's one thing a lot of players have talked about is, like, we've got to get up to speed real quick. And it helps that a lot of us have played FIBA competitions before. It helps that a lot of us have played together before, or that in Embiid and Tatum's case, they've trained together before, so there's some familiarity there. But it is always one of the challenges of America, where they don't train outside of 2 weeks leading up to the Olympics pretty much every time. This is a short turnaround.
It absolutely is. So to see where they are matched up against the Canada team that does have a lot of experience of playing together, and that's one of the things that to your point, that they're going to run into when they play these other teams is the chemistry that's already there with those groups. But to see him with the passing, some of the highlights that you may see from the scrimmages where a double team is coming one way, he hits Steph Curry cutting back door for a layup because of the attention at Peyton Pritchard, and I can't remember who the big man was defending him at that time. And he just simply drops it off for an easy layup. And that's where the unselfishness comes into play. And that's always the case when you look at these types of environments that they're in, where, to your point, Kyle, not being the alpha, Bam saying, we're all ones and twos and we have to give up and sacrifice because we understand what we're here for. But in this case, we have never seen that. We've seen it in the All-Star game setting, but this is totally different. They're just messing around. This is playing for something. And this is the very first time that he's playing for something. He's never been to an NBA Finals. He's never been to the Olympics. And to be around these players, which was some of the important things that you laid out in your piece earlier this morning, is that to see him and how he adjusts to playing with these guys. Sure, he knows them from the All-Star game experience. But as I just said, that's totally different. So now what do you do when it's a very close game and you do need a bucket? Yes, they might find him. He might be the one that they call his number to get them a bucket. But then there's also that double team that comes that way. And he cannot play that selfish hero basketball. He has to find the open man. He has to find a way to get a much better look elsewhere. And how much is he's gonna trust them? It's not just the shooting. It's that everybody individually can do what he does at a very high level. And is the trust going to be there? And when that does, if and when that does happen to success here, when he takes it back home to Philadelphia, to the 76ers, to George and Maxey out there on the floor, where he's remembering, hey, I know how good these guys are too. And in this situation, in this environment back at home, we can get it done because I can trust these two to go out there and do what they need to do to get a bucket. So that's why it's important for me with him here, because of him never being in a spot like this, him never experiencing winning. And if they do find a way to win this gold medal, or even if they fall short and they're in the silver, they win the silver or the bronze and they're there, but he was just that close again of winning and experiencing some sort of defeat yet again, how much of that will impact him when he gets back and puts on that Philadelphia 76ers uniform? And that's why I'm very curious to see how this whole thing plays out with him. But one thing I will say too, just looking at him and looking at everyone else, seeing him at 6 All-Star games and knowing that LeBron will pick him first in the draft when they have to pick those teams for the All-Star games, that guy belongs here. And this is the first time again, but just knowing his name matched up with the rest of that roster and the names that you see there, he belongs here. So now will his presence also dictate the same thing when he steps out there on the floor in meaningful situations with the ball in his hands out there with that group?
Yeah, it'll be good to transition from, this team and this experience and playing a reduced role and maybe being more of a setup man or an anchor defensively into the Sixers, because he will have more offensive talent than he's ever had, whether it's Tyrese Maxey and next step in his evolution. And I think last year, Joel Embiid certainly started off the season really making a focus to pass and his playmates involved, but I was probably even more impressed by what he did in the playoffs by, ceding basically some of the fourth quarter option or offense to Tyrese and letting him really be the driving force behind some of that. And he'll have to get a little more comfortable with doing that here in July and August with Team USA. And then hopefully when that transitions into October with the Sixers and you've got more offensive talent that they've had in quite some time, possibly his entire career. Not that Joel Embiid's ever going to take a back seat, but you don't have to be a 35, 40% usage guy every night to get it done, especially in the regular season. And you can trust your teammates, and building out that trust in a short time frame without maybe the shared experiences that someone like maybe the Denver Nuggets have. He'll have to do that here in Team USA, and he'll have to do that again with Paul George and the rest of the reigning cast with the Sixers. So it is something he's going to have to get comfortable with, and something I think he has been getting comfortable with over the last couple of years.
We all silly like the mayor.